Okay, welcome. All right, today is December 5th, so I'll just spend, even though we've spoken about it here and there, but just spend a couple minutes. We started saying V'tein Matar last night. So, why did we start saying it last night?
Because we didn't fix the calendar.
Because we didn't fix the counter. Okay, basically, yeah. Very briefly, a couple ideas, right? If it's a review, fine. If not, okay. But basically, we're supposed to pray for things we need, right? Basically, the question of attain telematar is when we daven, are we davening for us or are we davening for the Jewish people? And in other words, the practice, this was a debate, but the Rush tried to change it. The practice of the Jewish people everywhere in the world outside of Israel is to say V'tein telematar on 60 days, according to the Babylonian rain cycle. In other words, they start saying V'tein Tolamatar. Those who are from Israel know that they say V'tein Tolamatar on 15 days after Sukkot. We really should say it on Sukkot, but in this beautiful idea, Jews are traveling to the temple for Sukkot. They don't have, covers. They're open carriages. So they're going to go home, travel, and it's muddy, and then the wheels aren't so good. So in order that they not get caught in the rain, it's not nice to pray for rain when people who came to the temple are have to get home. So we delayed the prayer for rain for 15 days. And even though those reasons probably don't apply anymore today, still the custom is that in Israel you only start saying V'tein Tolamatar on 15 days later or the 7th of Cheshvan. Everywhere else we stay at 60 days after the fall equinox because that's when they needed rain in Bavel. So who cares when they need, that's in Iraq, who cares when they need rain in Iraq? So the Rosh said, that's right, we have to change it. Every community should say rain depending on when they need rain, which means that in Canada, you would say B'tein Tolamatar 12 months a year because it rains 12 months a year, rains or snows. And my understanding is, I have to verify this, my understanding is that Rav Chaim Soloveitchik always said V'tein Tolamatar in the bracha of Shomei Tfilah. Shemay Tefillah is like the catch-all bracha. You can add whatever you want because maybe we should be praying for rain at different times of the year, not just according to this. If we need rain, we got to pray for rain. Don't tell me it's like it's only November, so we don't need rain. No, we need precipitation in November. But the standard custom is we assume that we divide the Jewish world into Israel and Chutz La'aretz, right? We talk like that, the diaspora. We live in Chutz La'aretz. Doesn't matter. Chutz La'aretz can be London or Paris or Los Angeles or Toronto or New York. So that's our practice. So that's what we all do. Like I said, the Rush tried to change that unsuccessfully. So we all follow the Babylonian practice. The only question was, what do they do in the Southern Hemisphere? So I was reading last night, actually. I don't know if I had understood the question they should do what everybody else does, which is sort of correct. I mentioned the first question ever sent from the New World to the Old World was in Brazil, because the first Jews landed in Brazil in 1654, I believe, or first Jews arrived in the New World, and they're living in Brazil. It's a Portuguese colony. That's why they speak Portuguese in Brazil, and they don't know when to say V'tein Telematar because the spring is the fall and the summer is the winter and the winter is the summer. So they got everything backwards. So they sent the question to Israel. So they told them they should basically follow the Babylonian. We should still, since most Jews live in the Northern Hemisphere, and since we're all Babylonians, we all live outside of Israel, your particular needs don't really matter. I think what the Tshuva said, which I didn't realize was that they shouldn't say V'tein Telematar if rain is going to be dangerous. Like you don't want it to rain in Israel in the summer. That's bad. So you don't say V'tein. I don't know if it's okay if it rains in the summer in Brazil. I have no idea. But so you shouldn't say it. But anyways, that's what we do. We follow the Babylonian custom when they need rain. And of course, very quickly, Zev can explain if you want to. We should really be saying it on November the 21st. That's 60 days after the fall equinox falls on November 21st. And that's how they used to say B'tein Tel Umatar. But as I think many people here know, the Jewish calendar is based on the Julian calendar. Our Jewish calendar pretty much assumes that the Earth revolves around the sun every 365 and a quarter days, which is how the world assumed or ran till 1582, when they realized, or maybe they realized before, but they did something about it, that actually the Earth revolves around the sun in 365 and 5 hours and 48 minutes and 20 seconds, something like that. Correct me if I'm
11 minutes shorter.
sorry.
It's
It's
11
11
minutes
minutes shorter. Right. So
for
that's
you.
not a big deal in anybody's lifetime, but in 1500 years of lifetimes, it is a big deal. So on October the 4th, 1582, you went to bed and you woke up on October the 15th, Pope Gregory, and that's why our calendar is known as Gregorian calendar. And to this day, not everybody accepts it in the non-Jewish world, and that's why you have the Russian Orthodox Church and the Greek Orthodox Church, and that's why you have Christmas on January 6th, for those who follow this kind of stuff, because December, they don't go from this December 25th, coming 11 days earlier. So, and the Jewish people did not adjust for this change. So November 21st became December 2nd. But the halacha, okay, so the halacha, so we'll say potato butter on December 2nd. Instead of just saying no, 60, really we have to bring it back to the real November 21st. But the halacha did not do that. And then of course the year 1600 was a leap year, because we lose about three-quarters of a day every 100 years. The calendar is off by about three-quarters of a day every 100 years. So the way they do it in our calendar, the Gregorian calendar we all follow, if the century year is divisible by four, it has a leap year. So we were all alive in 2000. So 2000 had a leap year. None of us were alive in 1600, also had a leap year. But if it's not divisible before 1700, 1800, 1900, and 2100, maybe some of us will be alive then. 2100 will not be a leap year. There will not be February 29th. So then we will start saying the 10 Talmud are not on December the 5th, but on December the 6th. And in the 1800s, they said it on December the 4th. So in 1582, they start saying it on December the 2nd. 1600s, nothing changed because we still have that extra day. 1700s, we lose a day. There are only 28 days in February, even though it's every fourth year. So December 2nd becomes December 3rd. In 1800, it becomes December 4th. And in 1900, it becomes December 5th. And then in 2000, again, it doesn't change. So we say V'tein Tolam Atar on December 5th. Come December the 6th, come 2100, we'll start saying V'tein Tolam Atar on December 6th, not on December 5th. Now, come 3900, we'll be saying V'tein Tolam Atar on Christmas or whatever, and come 5900, we'll be saying it in February, and pretty soon we'll be saying it on Erev Pesach. And then you'll say it for one day, and then you'll start saying it in June, because eventually the calendar is going to, if we keep losing day. That's why a few years ago, everybody remember Thanksgiving and Hanukkah coincided. Everybody remember that? How many years ago was that? And people said it's the first time and last time in history. It will never happen again, because we jumped a day. In other words, we're at that point where we just missed a day. So we will never, you have to have Thanksgiving on November 28th. It could only work if Thanksgiving is November 28th. So it was for a while that the earliest Hanukkah could ever be was November 28th. But apparently now the earliest Hanukkah can ever be is on November 29th. So we'll never again have Thanksgiving, and that's much nicer. People like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Hanukkah. Then we got to worry about that. We're not, who kind of goyim. We're not into that kind of stuff, right? But it's very fascinating. The calendar is just a fascinating thing. The rabbis were well aware of this. My understand, even in the Talmud, they were aware it's not exactly 365 and a quarter, but for simplicity reason, they did it. Nobody, okay, so what's the big deal? The Mashiach's going to come. We remember, it was 70 years. Rabbi Akiva thought the Mashiach was Bar Kochva. How many years ago in exile? And so the rabbis are well aware of this problem. And the Mishnah Berurah says, don't worry about it. Because eventually what's going to happen is Pesach's going to be in June. Okay, and everything keeps moving forward and forward and forward. Every 100 years, every 128 years, it moves forward a day. Okay, so you're not noticing in your lifetime, but compared to when you're the people in the Spanish Inquisition celebrated Pesach. We're already 4 days later. We're celebrating Pesach than they used to celebrate Pesach. And 100 years from now, that'll be a day later, and 5 years. So it's eventually Pesach. Don't worry about it. By that time, the Mashiach will be here. I don't know. I don't have as much confidence as the Mishnah Berurah does. And I look at the Jewish people, the fighting and the garbage that goes on. I don't know. I hope he's right. I know the Rambam says you're supposed to believe he's coming every day, but I also know that people, it's not exactly true. But I mean, it may, whatever. However we I know I remember when I was learning in when I came back to Toronto after living in New York, I learned in the Aguda actually, because there was that they had a whatever. Unfortunately, whatever that was the place there. There wasn't a modern Orthodox Beit Midrash. So I went to learn in the Aguda. The Aguda, at night. I was single. I was learning there every night for a few hours. It was actually in many ways very eye-opening, but that's for another time. Learning there, I dressed the way I dress, and I actually became a little friendly with Rabbi Lowy. I think Rabbi Lowy, the Rabbi the Good, has like a soft spot for me a little bit, even though our ideologies don't see eye to eye. And and I remember the person, we had a whole program there of learning, and the person told me, they asked Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, told people, but the Mashiach, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky said, I can guarantee you the Mashiach's not coming this year. Say, well, how can you do that? They had a whole thing. No, that's not what it means. The Raman doesn't mean literally. Anyways, let's hope the Mishnah Berurah is right. The real problem is how can we ever in the world hope to get the rabbis to agree to adjust the calendar? That's the scary part. If it reaches a point where it really is a problem, then we have a real problem because you've heard me say it, I'm sure, many times. The one thing we really have to thank God for, and the only thing that keeps the Jewish people together, is the fact that we have one calendar. Can you imagine what it would be like if the Reform Judaism had Pesach on a Wednesday night and we had it on a Thursday night? Okay, whatever. It would be a disaster, Shabbat disasters, if Yom Kippur was not universally observed. And that's, of course, why Rabban Gamliel was willing to publicly humiliate Rabbi Yeshua and make him violate Yom Kippur. It's so against human rights and religious freedom. That famous case in the Mishnah where Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Gamliel argued on the calendar, and Rabbi Gamliel says, Yeshua, you're going to come on Yom Kippur with your wallet, and I'm going to give you a hamburger. That part doesn't say in the Mishnah, but it does say with the wallet. I don't know if he made him eat, but I wouldn't be surprised if Rabbi Gamliel made him eat, because we cannot, if the future of the Jewish people is in danger if we have a fight when Yom Kippur was. It doesn't matter who's right. And the Talmud says that it's a fascinating thing that these are the holidays that you should call. We declare, everybody knows, Mekadesh HaShabbat, Yisrael B'Hasmanim. Shabbos is every seventh day automatically. We don't do anything. The Kedusha of Shabbos is automatic. But Yontif, we have to imbue it with the holiness. So we have a fixed calendar today, but still, it's only 1,500 years we have a fixed calendar. We used to depend on the sighting of the moon, so we declare it. And the Gemara derives Asher Tikru Otam. Otam is actually spelled without a vav in the Torah. Atem, you can read it Atem, you shall declare it. These are holidays that Atem Tikru, and then the Gemara says Atem Afilu Toim Afilu Motim. If you're mistaken, even if you're wrong, it doesn't matter. We decide when Rosh Hashanah is. It doesn't matter if that's really the date of the new moon of Tishrei, and half the time it isn't, because we have a rule that Rosh Hashanah cannot be on a Lo Adu Rosh, cannot be on a Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday. So what are you going to tell me? The new moon of Tishrei never comes on a Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday? It's crazy. Of course it does. But it doesn't matter. We're allowed to push it off. We tell God when to adjust. So that's a powerful idea. So we determine the calendar, but that's why it was so important that Rabban Gamliel made Rabbi Yeshua violate Yom Kippur. And I mentioned before, I don't know, people don't know this, but I guess they don't tell you this in yeshiva so much. But there was a very tragic, I don't know what the word is, dispute in the years 931 or 932, right around there, for 2 years. The Jews in Israel and the Jews in Babel actually did have a different calendar, and Pesach was observed 2 days apart. Ben Meir was the Rosh what's it called? The Nasi in the land of Israel was this person by the name of Ben Meir, and Rav Sa'adya Gaon, the most famous of the Gaonim, was the leader of Babylonian Jewry. And the halakha is the calendar has to be established in the land of Israel. Without getting into all the technical details, that is the halakha. The calendar comes from the Israel. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah must come from the land of Israel. So Ben Meir, it had to do with the whole calculation, the mola, the whole technical problem, and they had it because of that, and then they had to push off because if it was the next day, then it would be one of these problems, Rosh Hashanah being a day when it can't be. So it got pushed off by 2 days. So in Israel and Bavel, they observed Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur 2 days differently for 2 years, and then. Thank God, I don't know exactly what happened. You can read up in the debate. There's scholarly articles about it. Rav Sa'adya on one out, and we follow the Babylonian practice. Okay, enough of this. Zev's question, then we can move on to Tachanun. But it's fascinating ideas. But yeah, so we don't exactly daven exactly parallel to our current needs. Nunu, what can you do? Zev, yeah, what do you want to ask?
Are there any poskim today that hold that we should follow the Israeli custom of pray for rain in Israel, not where we live, so we could settle this problem once and for all?
No, we just pray for Bavel. No, I think rabbis want to keep the distinction between Israel and Chutz La'aretz alive. That's, by the way, why I think the real reason Yontif Sheni is being the Orthodox rabbis made such a big deal to keep Yontif Sheni. It's not hard, really. It isn't. So I know it sounds radical. According to most Rishonim, or many Rishonim, I don't know if it's most, Yontif Sheni is not even a rabbinic law. It's a minhag. It's a minhag. Hizar b'minhag avotechem shebitechem. That's the language of the Gemara. Keep the customs. In other words, the Gemara already knew we don't need second day Yontif. Once they fixed the calendar in the year 359, still in the time of the Talmud. Talmud says, "What do we need 2 days Yontif for?" And the Rabbi says, "Hizar b'minhag avotechem. Keep the customs of your fathers." So some people interpret that means it's a minhag. Now a minhag often gets canceled when it doesn't apply. You could have done it, but the rabbis wanted to, I think, distinguish between Israel and Chutz La'aretz. And what's fascinating, really, really fascinating, is that in Israel they have 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, and in Chutz La'aretz we have 1 day of Yom Kippur. Now you understand, 1 day of Yom Kippur and 2 days of Sukkot makes no sense. Now, if you don't know when Sukkot is, you for sure don't know when Yom Kippur is. Yom Kippur is 5 days earlier. So, and if you know when Yom Kippur is, you know when Sukkot is. So it makes no logical sense to have 1 day of Yom Kippur. But the halacha has many considerations. You don't just look at one aspect. To fast 2 days, that's crazy. That's dangerous. So there are other considerations. So we're strict on Sukkot. We're strict on Yom Tov, we're lenient, but it's much more than that. Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot are the holidays of Israel. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur have nothing to do with the land of Israel. They're in personal holidays to do tshuva. Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, Ali ala regel, agricultural. It's Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot that are the holidays related to Israel. So those are the holidays we keep 2 days. Comes to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Jews in Israel and Jews in Chutz La'aretz are the same. I think there's something powerful about that idea. And what do we always read on this extra day of Yom Tif? By the way, in Chutz La'aretz, what's the Torah reading? On Sukkot, we flip it to Shmini Atzer because of some Torah, but there's always an extra day of Yom Tov, so we need an extra Torah reading. What's there are two sometimes, but what's the extra Torah reading we do on Yom
Taser and
Aser
Aser
Taser.
Taser.
What does it talk about? Aser Taser is only on Shmini Atzeret. We don't do that on Shavuos or on.
If it's the Shabbos, it's on it also. They do it.
Yeah, if it falls on Shabbos. Okay, correct. Yeah, but otherwise just on Shmini Atzeret. Correct. What's the main thing that it talks about? What's the main mitzvah there?
Korbanot.
Forget the Aser Taser because we need the 7 aliyahs on Shabbos. That's why we read it. And we do it Shmini Atzeret because that was the time they gave the tithes. But we don't do it on Shavuos. We don't do it on Pesach. It's not on Shabbos. What do we read? We read Kol HaBechor. No, what's the main mitzvah? Aliyah L'Regel. Shalosh Pamim Sh'Yer. So the mitzvah on the extra day of Yom Tov, what we read is that you should move to Israel. I mean, that's more like it's that Rabbi Leiptag. I heard that from him. It's just it's a little cute. I mean, maybe it's more than cute. Maybe it's serious. Cute sounds not serious, but the rabbis are saying, "Oh, you have an extra of Yom Tov. Shalosh pamim b'shana yer kosrucha pnei hamakom." Oh, you got to go to Israel. Okay, Okay, Steve,
Hey,
Bakasha.
Rabbi Kelman, you didn't answer my question. Is there any posik who
No, so
hold?
I'm saying no, as far as saying that, that's my whole point. That no, they want to keep us. I'm not aware that no, in other words, we follow Babel. At the time of the Israel, they could have said Babel follows Israel. I could hear the argument everybody should daven for rain when,
Israel?
but see clearly what's happening is the rabbis are saying we should daven for rain when we need it. Prayer is not what they in Israel. The prayer for rain is like here and now. We need. So that's why the Rosh says, okay, so in Spain it should be different and in Canada it should be different. But for reasons that are a little bit hard to understand, that's not done. I mean, that was not accepted. We all are buffalo. So on the one hand, we pray for what we need, sort of, but not really, because we don't really need the Babylonian rain schedule. So I don't know. It's sort of nishtahi, nishtaher. I don't know what to say. But basically, what the halacha is accepted is that all Jews who live in Chutz La'aretz are Babylonians, where the Talmud Bavli. I mean, I understand it on a certain level, but okay. That's so I'm not aware of anybody who says that we in Chutz La'aretz should. The question is, what if you made a mistake? What if you said B'tein Talmud Matar on the 10th of Cheshvan in Canada? Which so I don't know. I would paskin if I can say that you don't have to repeat the Shmon Esrei. I would assume. I think that's true even in the summer. I think in Canada, if you say V'tein Tomater in the summer, I would think you don't have to repeat the. In theory, you're supposed to repeat the Shmon Esrei, but not because really we do need rain in Canada. Okay, we don't say it, but if you said it by mistake, I don't know that it's so terrible. That's what I said. For Rav Chaim, I believe, hearing Rav Chaim Soloveitch would say it anyways in Shomei Tefillah. So he would add it not in Baruch Aleinu, but he would add it in Shomei Tefillah. So it's it's complex. Whatever how practices develop, that's the when are we davening for our immediate geographical needs, or are we davening with a little bit more of a global perspective? Yes, Steve.
Quick question. What makes you think that the rabbis actually knew about this 11-minute differential? I'm very
Because the Gemara, I don't know if they knew exactly it's 11 minutes, because the Gemara quotes the debate between Shmuel and Rav Ada. I have to look it up in Rosh Hashanah. Shmuel is the one who said that it's 365 and a quarter. Now, I don't know if Shmuel may have known, because remember, Shmuel is described by the rabbis as this great astronomer. Shmuel knew the ways of the sky like the streets of Naharda. He lived in Naharda. So Shmuel was known to be a great scientist. And he would follow the 365 and a quarter, I think. And Rav Ada says, no, he had this other calculation. It's a little bit less, a few minutes less. So I'm not, you have to look up on it. You have to talk to people like who really, get into the stuff. And talk to Irv Romberg, if you know who he is in Toronto. He spent 50 million hours. Zev is laughing because he knows he's a medical doctor researcher. He's done amazing work on the calendar. Really, he wants to design a whole new calendar, like a whole. So I think the Gemara seems to have known that it wasn't exact for sure. By 1582, the rabbis knew it wasn't exact, but the rabbis didn't want to go from Gimel Cheshvan to Yudalul Cheshvan or whatever, or even not to do that. Just go back to November 21st without changing it. Yeah, well, no, they'd have to change the Hebrew date. They weren't into that. I get it. It's I can say all the time, a conservative community, religious community doesn't change very quickly. It takes a lot and changes have to happen sort of on their own. They never happen by fiat. Like
They
changes
wouldn't have to
going.
change the Hebrew date.
I'm sorry.
They wouldn't have to change the Hebrew date.
Well,
No,
they
but
will
it only
eventually.
depends on the English date.
No, but if in other words, if we stay at the Tain Talamatar now in November 21st, but the Hebrew date would still be today, whatever it is, Tetvav,
Yeah, it wouldn't have
Kislev.
to change.
Sorry.
It's just based on 60 days after the equinox. It's not
Right, but that
nothing to do
wouldn't
with
solve
the
the
Hebrew
problem of the
calendar.
calendar creep unless you change the calendar creep problem. That Pesach is he keeps getting a day later every 128 days there. For that, you will have to change the Hebrew date. You're right. We could do 60 days after Kufat Cheshvan without changing the Hebrew date. But the system, it wouldn't fix the system problem that the calendar is creeping forward. In other words, we today, every one of us observes Rosh Hashanah about 15 days later than they did in the time of the Gemara. You understand? We're observing it on the Gregorian, like But we're observing it later because the calendar keeps moving. We assume they're 365, but really the calendar is going a little bit quicker. The Earth's revolving a little bit quicker than we say. So over 2,000 years from the time of the Talmud, that's added about 15 days. By 1582, 11 days. The Julius Caesar calendar, first century BCE, I believe, the Julian calendar. So whatever. Okay. And that's good. So any other question getting into Tachanun? Last week we spoke about the, Skudavod and Bridavod. So let's talk a little bit about, let's get back into Tachanun
They
itself.
charge extra for the $9.
I'm sorry? No. Okay. All right. Okay, let me share my screen. We'll do a few points. We'll see if we, okay. Okay. So, okay, let's remember. Okay, so the screen hasn't shared yet, I see. Give it a minute, I hope. Yeah, here. Okay, everybody can see now? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so we discussed, that's to get us back on track here, we discussed how repetitive Tachanun is. So either it's a conglomerate of sources, which it might be, but even if it's not, that's the whole point of Tachanun. It's this personal crying out to God, and you're all like confused, and we've been in exile for so long. That's really what it is. It's basically the Jews have suffered for so that's the theme. We've suffered for so long. God, please hear our cries, and it's for your sake, over and over again. It's your sake, and you're merciful, and you're kind, and it's the desecration of your name. We said over and over again. So when like a kid is like all confused and all upset, they repeat themselves. So that's why Tachanun. It's not like it's not we're learning a Rambam here where we can say every word, what's the actual meaning. Every theme is very similar. So I want to go through this actually quickly and hopefully just point out a few things and really, we'll move on to Vayomer David and then we'll get on to the later parts of the davening. But okay, so the reason we spoke last week on Brit Avot, because this is the idea of Scarlet and Brit Avot, to remember the covenant with our forefathers. So the whole debate, the merit of our forefathers, the covenant, and when can we rely on God, can we rely on God, and the debate is what's still here in Israel, not Israel. Those are all the things we discussed last week. Okay. And God save us for the sake of your name. Okay, so this is just a little cute thing, but this is what Rav Soloveitchik develops. I don't think because of this, but see our suffering. Tsar means actually narrow. But Sarotena, narrow, we're in straits, right? What do we say? Ubav de me'eretz Ashur, v'nitachim me'eretz Mitzrayim, okay, v'hanitachim, no, nitachim is scattered. Okay, I forget. But Ritzei Sarotenu, see our pain and hear our tefillot. So that's basically the view of how Rav Soloveitchik explains, or the view of the Ramban, that prayer is intimately and only connected to pain and suffering. The reason we pray is we've mentioned many, many, many times that the Ramban says there's no obligation to pray. Pray is a kindness from God. But what we haven't mentioned quite as often is the Ramban does say there is a time we have to pray, and that's when there are troubles afflicting the Jewish world, when there's an Eitz Sarah, when there's a terrible time. And then the Ramban says, not that you have to pray, but you have to pray with a minyan. Because in other words, there's afflictions of the Jewish people, it means the Jewish people have to gather together and pray. It's very different than individual prayer. Yeah, in there's prayer, it's nice to daven with the minyan in the morning, very nice, but you don't have to, right? But the Ramban says when there's an Eitz Sarah, you have to daven, the Jewish people have to come together and daven. And Rav Soloveitchik goes so far to claim that the Rambam agrees with the Ramban, that the Rambam, even though the Rambam, postulates that there's a mitzvah, an obligation to pray every day, once a day, a biblical obligation, that's only, the Ramban agrees that it's only because there's an Eitz Sarah, just the Rambam holds that people are in a constant state of need. It's it's for the philosopher, the Rav Soloveitchik is coming out there, that man is always in tension and man is always in need. And the Ramban says if you don't recognize your needs, then you don't, then no, it only counts if you recognize their problem. But it's nice. Some people are so oblivious to what's going on, they don't even know their problems. Okay. Anyways, but here you have the idea that the Eitz Sarah and Tefillah come together. What do you say here? Okay, Ritzei b'tzaratenu v'shma kol tfilatenu ki ata shomea tefilot chopeh. We have that theme a lot, that God, of course, He listens to everybody's prayer. Tefillah kopeh, and of course, this is a universal theme, right? Rav Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva about non-Jewish prayers. It's very nice. I think it's related to when the public school system used to have prayer in the public school system. The question was, can Jews, do Jews have to leave? People like went to public school, of a certain generation. So Christmas time, they sang all the Christmas carols, and the Jews had to participate. Yeah, I'm sure many of you are aware of this sort of tensions that went on, and so here, but the idea that absolutely non-Jews can pray, and I think Ramosh, there are universal prayers. I think that I have to look up the tshuva now. That Ramosha says there are times, I know they did this after 9/11, and Rabbi Lookstein got criticized for participating. There was a sort of a communal prayer service for all the religions come together. I think they did it in Yankee Stadium, because people remind me who remember, and that's a question: can Jews participate in a prayer service, a universal prayer service? And maybe that's, I know, a little bit different here, but there is a concept absolutely that non-Jews should pray, because prayer is the recognition of God. I imagine in this context is talking more on the Jewish people, but okay. All right, the next paragraph, we're sort of El Rachum v'Chanun. God is a merciful and kind God, and he's just Rachum is more to have pity. Chanun is to be, if we're not Rachum is somebody, have pity on us. Chanun is when we're not deserving of something. Rachum, we could be deserving. It's not whether we're deserving. If someone is in pain or someone have pity on us. Chanun means we're totally undeserving of your goodwill, but please give it to us anyways. Rachem aleinu v'kol masecha. There's nobody like you, God. Anasana pishainu. God, carry, Yisa, Nasi, to carry Peshainu. I find it very interesting that the sin we use is a Pesha. Remember, we divide sins, remember from Yom Kippur, we divide sins into Chet, Avon, and Pesha. A Chet is an quote unquote an unintentional sin. You want to call it a careless sin, right? You didn't really mean to sin. An avon is, I meant to sin, I like cheeseburgers, so I go to McDonald's and eat cheeseburgers. And a pesha is a spiteful sin. I don't like cheeseburgers, but I know I'll get my parents upset if I eat a cheeseburger, and I'm having a fight with my parents, so I go eat a cheeseburger. So that's, the pesha is a rebellious sin. So we ask God to ask God to forgive us for the chait. Okay, then that's only one level. So we ask God to forgive us for our even our rebellious nature. Yes, Yocheved, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, so maybe I
No?
just missed it, but what exactly did Rav Moshe say about public school prayer?
So I have to look it up again, because it just popped into my mind as I was speaking, that and I don't remember the details, but that prayer non-Jews can pray, and I think it was in the context, but I have to check of Jews and non-Jews praying together for. Listen, Ramosha was an unbelievable patriotic American. I mean, I know he wasn't a big fan of eating turkey on Thanksgiving, although he didn't forbid it. But yeah, people who know Ramosha was an unbelievable patriotic American, because he appreciated America saved his life, saved Jews, so many Jews. Those who could get out of Europe were smart enough, whatever, foresight, lucky, whatever word you want to use, to get out of Europe. It's only America saved their life, and America is the protect. I mean, whatever you think of what's going on in America today, America is still the freedom of the world and everything, and all the help they give Israel. Where Moshe was an unbelievable patriotic American, and paying taxes and whatever. So I have to look up the exact details about the public prayer idea. I know it sounds strange, but why not? We want to encourage people to pray. We don't, secularization. Church and separation of church and state is great. Halavai, we had it in Israel. Israel needs separation of church and state too, and not the American model, but they need it. We can talk about that later. But the idea of secularization isn't good. You want to separate the authority. You don't want to mix religion and politics. As Jonathan Sachs, I always like to quote, right? If you mix religion and politics, you get bad politics and worse religion. And you see that in Israel today, unfortunately. The mixing of religion and politics is a disaster for religion. And anyways, I don't know if Zev is agreeing with me or not agreeing with me. When he's shaking, you're agreeing with me. Yeah, of course. Anyway, so I'll have to look. I'll have to look up the exact truth of Ramosha. But Ramosha felt it's very nice that non-Jews stuff, and I forget what he said. Non-jumping together. It's interesting. It reminds me. I think one of the most interesting pieces they ever wrote was for the last Siyum Hashas of Daf Yomi. So was anybody there? Was anybody at MetLife Stadium the last Siyum Hashas? No one was there. Okay, I wasn't there either. So it's a MetLife Stadium insurance. Where else the greatest insurance is? Learning Talmud in the insurance stadium. All right, the Jets and the Giants. So I wrote a whole piece. It was very cute. The Jets and the Giants never leave MetLife Stadium in January because they never make the playoffs. They've been horrendous. And what are the Giants this year? They won 2 games the whole year. But I wrote something fascinating. If you all remember, it was on January 1st. It's on New Year's. And I found that so ironic. I totally get it, and I think it was the right thing to do on New Year's. But for the Aguda to run the Daf Yomi event on New Year's, how can they do that? Ramosha has a tshuva, not forbidden, but not a good idea. You shouldn't get married on a Sunday. Now, needless to say, nobody follows this. Nobody, so Ramosha would be very nice. Because you get married on Sunday, you're recognizing the non-Jewish world. What's Sunday? There's no Sunday. So it's Christians. So I know of one shul, I mentioned before, in Silver Spring, where they daven the same time Sunday as during the week. Most shuls, I'm sure all your shuls daven later. We don't later, not because people are going to church, We don't later because it's convenient. Nobody's working. Nobody wants to get up early. But you understand, Ramosha was sort of very, can't even have a bar mitzvah. You can't even, and he said, if you dafka do it on Sunday, it was very not into Sunday, like to do anything on Sunday. A bris he allowed because what can you do? The baby's born, you have to do the bris on Sunday. But he was really, so I found it so ironic that the Aguda would celebrate Daf Yomi on New Year's. It wasn't the day of the Daf. The Daf Yomi finished January 4th to January 5th. They made it 4 days early. Now, I get it. People aren't working. But it shows you how Americanized even the whatever word, Haredi, right wing, whatever world, is totally Americanized. And English and everything we do. We're as a good friend of mine who got his PhD under Dr. Chorsky at Harvard and wrote his PhD thesis on German Orthodoxy and on Mendelssohn, said to me that the typical Aguda member is 100 times more assimilated than Mendelssohn ever wanted them to be. In other words, Moses Mendelssohn, when he talked about joining the society, he didn't imagine the way we join today the society. We're so integrated, right? So it's just funny. I guess historically times change, and Mendelssohn. I don't have to tell you what they think of him in certain parts of the world, but it's just interesting. So that's the little thing you have. I just find I find this whole thing just fascinating about how we relate to the non-Jewish world, and and New Year's and Christmas and all that stuff, and it's we live here. What can you do? So, anyways, I believe that, or I'll look up for next week the actual tshuva where he talks about davening on with non-Jews, but that non-Jew should daven Rav Moshe's for sure. That I know for sure he likes. Okay. Let's go. Let's move a little quicker. Okay, here we just say, God, you're our protector, you're our redeemer. El Chai Kayam, you're our permanent God. HaChasid, you're strong. Bekoach, Chasid, you're righteous. V'tov. Generally, the word Chasid is kind of like Chanun. In when we say you should be a Chasid, the way the commentaries explain Chasid is to do to do more than you have to. There's minimum standards of halakha that a Jew should observe, and a chassid goes beyond. The case in the Gemara, that's really what a chassid. So in a certain sense, that's what we're asking God to do. As a matter of fact, if you remember, the Gemara in Brachot 7a says that God davens every day. It's a little bit heretical, right? Anthropomorphic, right? It says, Ki beiti beit tefillah yikarei l'chol amin. That's the pasuk. We read it every fast day, the Haftorah from Yeshayahu. Vaviyotim el har kodeshi. We say it on Yom Kippur. V'simachtim beit tefillati. You will rejoice in my house of prayer. So what it really means is my house of prayer, the prayer where the people come to pray to God. But literally, it means beit tefillati, in my house, meaning God. I'll bring you to Vaviotim al Harkachi. I'll bring you to the mountain, Temple Mount. V'simachtim, I will rejoice with you. B'beit tefilati, ki beit tefillah yikarei l'chol amim. Yocheved, there's your real answer. Ki beiti beit tefillah. I don't know why I didn't say it right away. Ki beiti beit tefillah yikarei l'chol amim. The temple, the Jewish temple, is a place where Muslims and Hindus and Christians and Buddhists come to pray. Ki beit tefillah yikarei l'chol amim. And they didn't have, I don't know that they had a mechitza between the Christians and the Jews. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So the Gemara interprets that God prays. It's a beautiful idea, right? And then the Gemara says, okay, God prays. What does he pray? So what's God's prayer? Who remembers? What does God pray? So the Gemara says in
To hold in
Brachot
his anger, right?
that he should not be angry at the Jewish people. We give him reason to be angry, and he should act lifnei mishur hadin. Should act lifnei mishur hadin. He should go beyond the call of duty. And obviously, whatever we know about God is about man. We're created in the image of God. So what the Gemara is saying is that's what we should pray for every day. I mean, if God is praying every day, he should do more than required to be nicer than you have to be. Then if God can do that, we should do that. So that's the idea really of a chassid, that when we say that God, if man's a chassid, he does more than it's you, he has to, but in a sense it's true about God also. So that's it. El Chai v'Kayam chassid v'tov. He does more and he's good. Al-Kom Asecha, and everything he created, Jew, non-Jew, animals. God is concerned about everything. Ki'ata Hashem Elokeinu, you're a God. El Erech Apayim, this is a reference, of course, to the 13 attributes of mercy. Remember, Tachanun is all about asking God for mercy. We're suffering too much. Mercy. Malei Rachamim, you're full of kindness. Asei Manu, God, be kind to us. Karov Rachamecha, V'hoshienu, and save us. Again, for your sake. We say this over and over again. Shema Malkeinu Tfilatenu. Hear our prayers, Miyad Oivenu, from our enemies to save us. Again, Shema Malkeinu, right? Again, we just said it in the last sentence. God, hear our King, hear our prayers, right? Shema Malkeinu Tfilatenu. We say 2 sentences in a row. Mikol Sarah. It's the exact. We just repeat the same sentence, but here it says Mikol Oivenu, from all our enemies. And here we say from all our trials and tribulations, which may be self-imposed. It's not just our enemies. In other words, we have external problems, that's oivenu, and sarav yagon can be internal issues. Again, hatzilenu, save us. It's almost a repetition. Avinu malkeinu, our God, we say this all the time. We all know Avinu Malkeinu. This is also the duality. There's a little bit different. God, we relate to God both as a father and a king. Those, of course, are very different types of relationships, but that's the complexity we have. Ata v'shimcha leinu nikra, and your name is upon us. In other words, the way we act is a reflection of God. Al tazveinu, again, do not leave us, our Father. Al tichenu barenu, our Creator. Don't forsake us. Don't forget about us. I think there's a rhyme here, a very sort of poetic, very al talichenu, al tazveinu, al tichenu, al tishkachenu, right? Just the yotzreinu, you're our barenu, yotzreinu, avinu, right? Everything rhymes here.
Don't abandon us.
I'm sorry, yeah. Don't abandon us. You are our kind and merciful God, which is exactly how we started. Just like in the bracha of the Shemona Esrei, we always have the end reflects the beginning, El Rachum V'Chanun, and Ki Melech Chanun V'Rachum. And this, of course, is the conclusion we say at Yala B'Yapo. So that's this paragraph. Next paragraph is going to be very similar. You can read it over. It's just El Ein Kamocha, there's nobody like you, God. Chanun B'Rachum, again, Chanun B'Rachum, which you just ended. Hashem Elokeinu, Ein Kamocha, again, nobody like you. El Erech Apayim, we saw that last time too. V'Rav Chesed V'Emet. Now here we combine Chesed and Emet, which are a little bit contradictory. They fight with each other. Because Chesed, sometimes you do things not really true. They're not deserving. Emet is truth. Said Chota Moshe LaKadosh Baruch Hu. Emet, God is a God of truth. But sometimes we lie. Sometimes we follow Aaron HaKohen. To promote peace, we lie in a certain sense, right? If God was only Emet, we'd be in big trouble. So the Emet has to be combined Chesed. That's a little bit different, I think, than Chesed Shel Emet. That to go to a funeral, that's not what it means here. That means we go to a funeral, we call it Chesed Shel Emet because you don't expect any repayment, which isn't totally true either, because maybe you expect repayment from the family. But okay, we'll leave that aside. But here it's just attributes of God. Hoshienu b'rachamecha harabim, save us. Mirash, there shouldn't be noise. In other words, just we need quiet. Umirogas. Bikesh Yaakov Avinu Leishe B'Shava. Next week's parsha. Yaakov Avinu Vayeshev. He wanted to sit quietly. God said, "There's no quiet for the righteous in this world. Presumably, for the non-righteous, there is quiet. I don't know, but even the righteous, everybody needs quiet. We need a little quiet." Zechor Lavadecha. Again, here we are invoking what we spoke about last week: the merit of our patriarchs. Al Tefein El Ksheinu. God, we're tough people. Ignore that about us. El Rishenu, ignore the evil that we do. Kisheinu means our harshness, right? The kshe, or if we're stiff-necked people. I'll just repeat, I don't know if last time I said it, but I love the explanation. Rabbi Doron Perez, I'm sure everybody knows, now became the head of CEO of World Zionist Congregation, whatever his official title is now. Of course, everybody knows he lost his son, of course, on October 7th, tragically. His body was held there until the Trump deal now. His body was held there. So Doron Perez, he spoke on our motion program last year, and he said, what does an Kshe Oref mean? Anybody know what it means? It's such a beautiful explanation. What does it mean to be a Kshe Oref? A stiff-necked people.
You said that you can't compromise, you can't turn.
Right.
You only see one
excellent.
perspective.
Very good. Debbie, you can give all the shiur, right? So
no, I listened to you. I learned from you.
Your neck can't move. So what happens if your neck can't move? I can't see to the right. I can't see to the left. My perspective, I don't have vision. I'm sure if you only have tunnel vision, you only see like we did. We talked to our silos, whatever it's called, the polarization we have. I'm sure if nobody sees other views, it's such a beautiful idea. That's a terrible thing to be an Am Sheoref. Sometimes it's used in a positive, but I mean, when you don't see, I can't move my neck. I can't see beyond my Dalet Amud, as they say. Okay, let's go back to a little more, and then I have to stop here. Okay, so God, don't look at our our stubbornness, or our wickedness, or our sins. Here we see our sins here's a generic term, I think, chatenu, but it's interesting. Before it said pesha, chet is sort of the lower form of sin. Then we said this is the only one of two verses, right, that don't come from, that are in the Chumash in all. We spoke about that a few weeks ago, right? All the other psukim are Daniel or Tehillim. That's the Chet Egel. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu's first argument, that God, you're angry. I get it. I get why you're angry. 40 days later, and we're dancing around the golden calf. I understand, but God, count to 10. That's really what Moshe says. And have pity or remorse, right? God had remorse that Hinachem was also. In other words, don't carry out evil to the people. And don't kill us. Of course, the result of the sin of the golden calf was the Levim killed 3,000 people. It actually ties into this week's parsha, of course. Shimon and Levi, Yaakov into the fight. Yaakov was right. We don't like to. You can't kill the whole town. Because and then Shimon, he curses them on the deathbed, and Shimon has a very sad history, because Shimon is not even, they're the ones, the 24,000 people who die with Balak and the sin with Midian in the 40th year, and don't think it's not connected, and they go down, and Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't even bless them. Shimon is like, oisfor, whatever. I mean, I hate to say that, and what happens to Levi? Levi had that potential too, but Levi somehow managed to channel their violent nature into positive dreams. So it's not so great, but they killed the 3,000 people. That's at least moving away to a little bit more, not that sounds great, and then the Levim become the people who serve the Jewish people. Shimon and Levi are separated. It's too dangerous when they are together. So we ask God not to kill the entire Jewish people because of the Chet Egel, and that's of course what happened. What happened is 3,000 people were killed. That's a terrible thing, but there were 603,000 males, so it's only 0.5%. No, it's not good. But in the sin with the Benot Midian, 24,000 people were killed. People don't often realize that 8 times as many people were killed. The Chet Egel we view as much worse. And maybe this was limited to the tribe of Binyamin. But anyways, we ask God that even when we sin, we are stiff-necked and we're Rishayim and we're Chataim. God have mercy on us. Okay, let's just quickly review, and then I got to go teach a little bit. Okay, so we discussed a little bit our calendar and Metain Talamatar and why it's off. We pretend we're Babylonians, and there is something to that we divide the Jewish world into Israel and Chutz La'aretz. Yes, and there's of course a reason to say differently, which is Russia, that we should pray where it is individually, and that's a tension maybe in the southern hemisphere. We do that a little bit, but basically Jewish history has accepted the view that we pray like we're in Babylonia, and therefore we say V'tein Talamatar when in 60 days later, that's when they needed it. And then we discussed because of the fact that our calendar works on a Gregorian calendar, which they presumably knew, at least for much time, and now for sure now everybody knows it's not really accurate. But the problem, they say, okay, well, the problem's in 2,000 years. We'll kick it down the can. We're going to worry about it now. And even now, it's not going to be a problem for, I don't know. I don't know exactly when Pesach gets, I don't know what the date is. I should look it up when Pesach gets to that. It's really not allowed to celebrate that. It's not considered Chodesh Aviv anymore. Shamor Chodesh Aviv, but the Pesach Torah warns us, has to be Chodesh Aviv. So you really only have a month. It's not like, so once Pesach gets to May 10th, I don't know. Like, you're not, I don't know what to do. I don't know. We're going to have to do something, but whatever, we'll see what happens. Okay, and then so that's what we do, and then move now December 5th and 2100 to move to December 6th. Okay, and then we got into the oceans of Tachanun, praying to God. That's what we do over and over again. God have mercy on us. What did I just? One thing I just want to look up for half a minute. What do we say here? We talk about our pishaim. God should forgive us for everything, and that's over and over. He should listen to us. We're suffering too much, and we talked a little bit, of course, about worldly prayer. That the prayer is a universal concept. Ki beiti beit tefillah yikarei l'chol amim. We can discuss next week. I'll try to look up Rav Moshe's Shuvah and joint prayer, but that is really what happened after September 11th. Remember, they had, I think, a joint prayer service, and Rabbi Lookstein participated, and okay, good, fair, right? And then, obviously, whenever something like that happens, people are going to criticize you. But we live in a complex world, right? Christmas, New Year's, we that means to live in Chutz La'aretz, what the way it is. And we make Daf Yomi celebrations Dafka on New Year. They Dafka made it on New Year's, even though there wasn't the date. And it's very funny. I totally get it. I agree with the move. I just find it so interesting. Okay, please go. We'll pick up next week. Like I mentioned, there is our emails aren't working totally. Especially you're on Gmail. You can go on the website and look. The Hanukkah program is posted on the website, so you can register there, even if you don't get an email. Hopefully, it'll be a fixed, but it's out of my hand. My recollection is Rav Moshe allowed rabbis to say Jewish prayers as part of a secular event. Okay, so it's a political event, even if not Jew. Right, it's something along those lines, Morris. Thank you very much. That's what I seem to remember too. Just want to look up the exact details. Right, so people today might consider that radical. But no, Rav Moshe, as we said, was a great patriotic American. We share with humanity. That's Rav Soloveitchik. We're Ger V'Toshav. We have much in common with the world, and praying and working together. It's very nice, And Rabbi Soloveitchik gave, the lonely man of faith was given at a Catholic university. Like the Rav spoke, he could relate to frum Christians, but we can talk to them. The priests, we have much in common. And thank God, at least the relations with Christianity are much better than they were. Unfortunately, relations with Islam have gotten worse. Okay, hopefully that can get better too. All right, everybody. Shabbat shalom. If you don't get emails, all the classes, please God, are going on next week. Go to the website. You can see, register, and nice to see you. And please God, we'll see you next week. Invite a friend to come and learn. And Shabbat shalom. Bye-bye.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom. Yeah.